There are fears in number 10 of a Penny Mordaunt ascendancy.
Yeah, it's in the Telegraph today, and it's reporting that right-wing Tory MPs are using Penny Mordaunt as a stalking horse, a way to oust Rishi, using her as a ploy, if you like, to start a leadership contest and then put in their own candidate. So basically, she's not their number one candidate, but she would be somebody who might be influential enough to cause change.
She wouldn't want to be a stalking horse.
No,
she
wants to be leader. Yeah.
However, senior Conservatives like Jacob Rees-Mogg and David Davis are rallying behind the PM, calling the idea mad and bonkers. David Davis said, I think all this Mordaunt stuff is put up by her enemies, not her friends.
Which is an interesting point, actually, when you think about it. We're joined now by political commentator Jack Rowlett. And a very good morning to you, Jack. Yeah, I mean, do we believe any of this, or is this just the press going mad because there's a vacuum of real facts?
Oh, I think the plot is real. Whether it's going to work or not is quite another question. I think the one thing people hate more at the moment than the Conservative Party is the Conservative Party when it's most divided. We know that their poll ratings, their approval ratings fall whenever there's all this infighting. Frankly, the Tory party had the opportunity to put Penny Mordaunt in place as leader if they wanted to 2 years ago. The so-called Tory right torpedoed our chances of becoming prime minister over the trans rights issue and instead decided to put forward its most visionless candidate in the form of Rishi Sunak and its weakest communicator and leader in the form of Liz Truss. I don't think this is going to work, even if they were to move forward with this coup, whether it's using Penny Mordaunt as a stalking horse or, as is being suggested, actually the left and the right of the Tory party might be able to unite around her. I don't think it's going to change anything, really. The public have made their mind up, and actually the best thing for the Conservative Party to do, damage limitation really, would be to do as David Davis, as Rees-Mogg are saying in today's papers, and to stick with Sunak. We know Sunak's hoping that this week there's going to be better news in the form of inflation figures, that he's going to be able to see off amendments to the Rwanda bill. So I think really the best thing to do is to stick with Rishi Sunak, hope the economy turns a corner, and hope that they can limit the scale of their losses to the Labour Party in the general election later this year. Because I just don't think the public are going to forgive a fourth prime minister in so many years.
But this is where it falls apart a little bit for me, the idea of her being a stalking horse. Most stalking horses, when they arise, are people who know they're not going to get the job, don't particularly want the job, but they are there to perform a role, to get the ball rolling, if you like. Penny Mordaunt, she wants the job. She doesn't want to be a stalking horse. So if she's being set up as one, she won't be very happy.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think everything we know about Penny Mordaunt suggests that that she wouldn't want to be a stalking horse, and certainly wouldn't want to be used in that way. And it certainly seems like the other major candidates here, Kemi Badenoch, doesn't want to move forward with a coup right now. That's certainly what is being suggested in today's papers. So it's kind of unclear who the actual candidate would be if Penny Mordaunt were the stalking horse. Although, of course, there is the suggestion as well that actually the party may just be able to unite around her. There's this rather bizarre suggestion in today's papers that they're going to lock all the Tory MPs in a room in the same way that they decide on a new pope. They're going to lock them all in a room and not let them out until they've decided on a new leader. Of course, popes these days tend to last rather a long time, and Tory leaders don't even seem to last till Christmas. So I'm not sure whether that method's going to work very well. But yeah, I don't think this changes anything. I think even if Sunak is deposed, and it's seeming more likely than not that we are going to see some form of challenge, but I think this will just damage the Conservative brand more. It doesn't change the fundamentals of the fact that I think most people across the country, for better or worse, have decided that they want a change.
But when you have, day after day after day of these very damaging headlines about Rishi Sunak's hold on to power, as it were, in the end, it's like when you become the story, you just have to go, because the story is that nobody has any faith in him. That's the story, suggested anyway. When that is just repeated so often, it becomes the truth, doesn't it? And you wonder how on earth he can hang on in there seeing these awful headlines every day.
Yeah, and look, I think if we hadn't had kind of the saga with Partygate and Boris Johnson and his very public deposal and then Liz Truss, I think it would be right for the Tory party to maybe have one last roll of the dice and ditch Sunak. But the problem is they've already done this. They've already tried getting rid of their leaders and installing a new one. So I think, yeah, Sunak, he's a visionless prime minister. He's weak. I think time after time, week after week, we're seeing more stories about Sunak's loss of control. But actually, if it doesn't change the kind of fate of the Tory party, there doesn't seem to be much point, because you'd have to do a whole lot of very public bloodletting, so to speak, in order to get rid of Sunak. I certainly don't think he would go quietly for very little real gain in the medium term. I think really they've got to stick with Sunak and just wait and hope something comes up. But of course, the local elections are coming up too. We know that's going to be a massacre for the Conservative Party. So I think the chances of a challenge are going up. The chances of a challenge succeeding in turning around the fate of the Tory Party are very low, though.
Yeah, meanwhile, I mean, there's plenty of criticism about Keir Starmer and the uninspiring Labour Party at the minute, to be perfectly honest. And yet this is a blessing, isn't it? I mean, quite literally, all they have to do is sit back and say virtually nothing. Yeah,
I mean, there's the old adage, isn't there, that oppositions don't win elections, governments lose them. And I think that's very, very true in this case. I mean, the Labour Party doesn't really need to do much, as you say. I think that once the country's decided it wants a change, it's sort of set in stone, and it feels very much like we are moving towards definitely a comfortable Labour majority, if not a landslide. And actually, I think that for any potential leadership candidate in the Conservative ranks, they'd be much better thinking, well, we're going to lose later this year. There's going to be a big battle for the soul of the Tory party over its future direction. Actually, keep your powder dry, wait for that time and try and rebuild the party from the ashes later on. That's going to be a much better way of actually making your case and potentially moving the Conservative Party towards your sort of ideological direction. And there's going to be plenty that the Labour Party is going to do in government that there needs to be a strong centre-right party to oppose. And I think really now the Tory party and the potential successors to Sunak need to be thinking about opposition.
OK, Jack Rowlett, good to see you this morning. Thanks very much indeed.